Hello everyone, welcome back to MovieRecaps. Today I bring you the 2006 British movie named Big Nothing. Be aware there are spoilers. The movie opens up with a man named Charlie sending his daughter Emily to a daycare worker in the morning. When he returns home and checks the mailbox, he is frustrated to find it empty. Later, while having breakfast, his detective wife Penelope talks about her recent case, where a brutal serial killer called the Oregon Undertaker has been mutilating and murdering young women in the town. When hearing the graphic description, Charlie stops her from going into the details. He is going to interview for a job today, but Penelope tells him he doesn't have to do this. Charlie says Emily has been only eating SpaghettiOs for dinner in the past week. Turns out Charlie is a writer, but his new book hasn't received any response from publishers recently, making him not of any income. Later, Charlie goes to a call center for his interview as a supervisor, but he soon realizes he has to work 6 months as a representative before interviewing for a supervisor, despite the fact he has a PhD. But still, he has no better choice but to accept the job. And his colleague Gus is assigned to help him start.
Welcome to hell, dickhead.
I'm sorry?
Hell. People hooked up to machines like slaves. And the smell? It's pure underarm.
When Gus receives an unfriendly call, he puts it on hold before insulting the caller and hanging up. During their lunch break, Gus introduces his daughter Tiz, who is going to go blind if she doesn't get a cornea transplant. When Charlie asks if he's able to afford the surgery, the bells interrupt and make them go back to work. Charlie is soon overwhelmed by callers' irrelevant questions and anger, leading him to respond to the calls like Gus does. However, he pressed the wrong button while doing it, resulting in getting fired by the supervisor. When he's about to leave, Gus thinks he owes Charlie one and invites him for a drink that night. At the bar, Gus says he has a plan to get enough money for his daughter's surgery, and Charlie can be his partner. He shows Charlie a record of online history he came across in the company's database. He discovered a reverend has logged onto an illegal porn website, and points out that the reverend will probably fork over some cash to preserve his reputation. On realizing it's blackmail, Charlie wants to leave. Gus says what they do is nothing compared to a reverend watching illegal underage stuff.
Who's the real criminal here?
He used to do things by the book and work 9 to 5, but now his daughter is going blind. And what they do will be completely non-violent and no one will get hurt whatsoever. Moreover, all Charlie needs to do is to be Gus' alibi, and he will get half of the money, which is $50,000. He makes Charlie pick one of the 2 candies on his hands. The blue one means he goes home with nothing, and the red one means he takes the chance but there's no turning back once he eats it. Believing he's the one just like Keanu Reeves, Charlie takes the red one. And Gus starts briefing him on his plan. Then suddenly a girl jumps out behind Gus, demanding to join in the plot. The scene cuts to a flashback when Gus met the girl Josie, who's a waitress in a restaurant. They are interested in each other and decide to have some bedtime exercise together later that night. When Josie mentions she was Miss Teen Oklahoma last year, Gus immediately stops and puts up his pants.
FBI, open up!
Back in the present, Josie says they'll be needing her to make the phone call, because if the reverend records their voice, the cops will match it up with the data from the call center and find out their identity in no time. Therefore, the duo will need her help, and she wants $20,000 from it. At this point, the duo seems to not know voice changers exist in this world. Anyway, they proceed to make the call in a phone booth. Things go as planned except Josie raises the money to $200,000 out of the blue. But surprisingly, the reverend still accepts to give them the money. Later, Gus still reprimands her for the arbitrary change and warns her not to do it again. He then tells them about his plan. He will go get the money at 9 p.m. tomorrow. And meanwhile, Charlie will be in the bar, pretending he and Gus run out of gas, and waiting for Gus who's on his way to the gas station. After he stashes the money in the railway station, he will come back to the bar.
The guy at the station will testify that he never saw you.
Sure, you know why? Because he's blind.
Well, let's pretend the security cameras are blind too. The next day, they will divvy up the money and go their respective ways.
Why don't we just divvy up the money immediately?
Rule number 2, always let the dust settle after a job.
The next night while having dinner, Penelope mentions an FBI agent will come to help her solve the Oregon Undertaker case. When she complains about why some people just turned into criminals, Charlie tries to sound her out on what she would do if he became a criminal.
I don't know, stole some money or something?
I'd arrest you.
Later, Charlie goes to the bar at 9 p.m., and Gus heads to the reverend's house to collect the money. Charlie talks to the barman, saying Gus is walking to get the gas from the old blind guy's gas station, but to his surprise, The blind guy happens to sit right next to him, celebrating his 80th birthday. A panicked Charlie soon leaves the place and hurries to the Reverend's house. On the other side, things don't go well either, as when Gus enters the house, he is held at gunpoint by the Reverend. Very soon, gunshots can be heard in the house. By the time Charlie walks into the house, he only finds the Reverend lying in a pool of blood. He tries to wake the man, but the body doesn't have any reaction, making him assume Gus killed the Reverend. He panics and tries to call Josie, but getting no response. A very big brain move for Charlie to leave his fingerprints and a phone call record at a crime scene. Then he drags the body out of the house and ties it with a heavy garden gnome before dropping it into a septic tank. Charlie was just a part of the blackmail, but now he makes himself an accomplice of a murder. Later, Charlie looks for Gus in the house and sees him coming out of the bathroom. Gus says he conked the Reverend with a vase, so he's probably going to wake up any minute now. Charlie is shocked by his words and says he saw blood. But it turns out it's Gus' blood. Gus got shot through the leg and was cleaning his wound in the bathroom when Charlie arrived. Gus is speechless after learning what Charlie has done.
Can't we get him out of the tank?
Oh, yeah, how long's he been down there breathing liquid shit?
10 minutes tops. What?
They calm themselves down and start to clean the blood on the floor. When Charlie looks up, he finds the Jesus statue crying and starts praying for their sins.
Jesus. Hail Mary, full of grace.
Bathtub.
Later, when Gus bumps his head on a bookshelf, he kicks it angrily, and many DVDs drop out from the bottom of it. Charlie thinks they should be going, but they still let their curiosity get the best of them and start playing one of the discs. As they watch the content, they realize the Reverend has been producing snuff films, even causing Charlie to puke. Charlie decides to leave, but as he opens the door, a deputy is standing outside and about to knock on the door, causing Gus to hide under a table. He informs Charlie, who he assumes is living in the house, that the Reverend has just been found dead with 3 shots in his head inside a car down the road. Surprised that the person he killed wasn't the Reverend, Charlie tries to act naturally and answers the deputy's questions.
And your name is? Stephen Hawking?
When the deputy is leaving, the drag marks on the gravel path catch his attention. He follows the trail to the septic tank and demands Charlie open it. Then Gus appears behind and knocks him out before tying him up. Charlie thinks they've gone too far and decides to turn himself in. Gus tries to threaten him with a gun, but Charlie knows he won't shoot him and leaves.
Shit!
However, as he steps out of the door, another gun is pointed at his head. It's the Reverend's wife. She makes Gus drop his gun and starts to question the duo. When Charlie brings up the news of the Reverend's death, the woman bluntly confesses she murdered her husband because she can no longer stand his pervert husband's filmmaking hobby.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say...
Further, she plans to take her husband's earnings and flee with her boyfriend.
We're meeting here, and then we're going somewhere where we'll never worry about anything ever again. What?
I think he may already be there.
She then asks where the $2 million cash is, much confusing the duo. Getting no answer, she starts threatening them with the deputy's life. Just then, Josie breaks into the house and plants an axe on the woman's head, leading to another death that night. Gus explains everything to Josie, and the deputy says he can testify that the woman killed her husband, and that Josie saved his life.
What about the guy in the tank?
You killed him by accident. You wouldn't do much time at all. 5 years tops.
Not long after, Josie finds the money in the oven. But Charlie isn't as excited as the other two, and still wants to turn himself in, saying he can't just disappear and leave his family behind. Then they are interrupted by the deputy shouting for help, causing them to quickly drag him back, during which Charlie picks up the deputy badge and puts it in his pocket. Josie and Gus heavily intoxicate the deputy, as they plan to drop him and Charlie in the middle of nowhere before they flee. Before they leave, the deputy insists that he really needs to pee.
I can't go if you're, watching. Could you just close? Stage fright.
In reality, the drunken cop is struggling to escape from the window. When Gus puts on his jacket, something drops on the floor. When Charlie picks it up and glances at it, he furiously punches Gus on the nose. It's a flight to Vegas at 8 a.m. tomorrow, while Gus told them to split the money at noon. Josie and Charlie demand an explanation, and Gus says he owes $300,000 to his ex-wife, and there's a restraining order until he pays up. He lied about his daughter in order to make Charlie feel compassion and join the plan.
I have not seen or talked to my daughter in 2 years.
Why didn't you just tell me?
Would you have helped?
Of course not.
Well, there you go then.
Suddenly, a heavy thudding noise comes from the bathroom, making them rush toward it. The deputy slipped and accidentally killed himself, leaving no one can testify to the Reverend's murder. But Josie thinks it's better, as they don't have to run away now. She proposes they crash the deputy's car into a tree and put the 2 bodies in the woman's car before pushing it off a cliff. By this, the forensic would figure the drunken cop ran into a tree and flagged down the woman's car before taking the wheel and driving off the cliff. Although Gus and Charlie are skeptical, they don't have a better choice at this point. They put the bodies in suitcases before leaving. Then they wipe their fingerprints and push the deputy's car off the road, faking an accident. They then proceeds to head to a cliff for the next step. When they stop at a traffic light, Charlie discovers the shop outside has the exact same picture as the one Gus showed him, meaning he lied again about his family. Charlie is livid and starts arguing with him, during which Josie inadvertently gets hit on the face, making them almost crash into another car. The other driver approaches to check on them and wants to call the police, but Gus turns it down, saying no one was hurt. Before they part ways, the old man reminds him to close their trunk.
Is that your entire wardrobe you got in there?
No, it's a couple of dead bodies.
That was a good one.
The trio then continues on their way to the cliff. And this time Gus comes clean about his past of being a con man. A while later, they arrive at the cliff and open the trunk, only to find the woman's body missing. They immediately double back to look for the body. Charlie blames Josie for not checking the pulse, but she retorts that no one would survive when had an axe lodged in the skull. I would shut the hell up if I just drowned a living man by accident hours ago. Anyway, while they are arguing, they suddenly run someone over, and it's the Reverend's wife, who is surely dead this time. Just then, a police car arrives at the scene, and it's Penelope and another officer, who received an anonymous call reporting a body in the middle of the road. Josie and Gus explain they are Charlie's colleagues, and were heading to town for a drink, but the woman suddenly appeared, leaving them no time to avoid her. But still, they are brought to the station for statements. The driver earlier turns out to be an FBI agent Himes, who comes to help investigate the Oregon Undertaker. Penelope lets Charlie look after Emily and bring the other 2 to Agent Himes, who's examining the body. Charlie takes off his coat and tucks it around Emily. On the other side, Agent Himes concludes that this may be another victim of the serial killer, making the trio able to get away with it.
Wait! You're not going anywhere, little lady. Not without your coat.
Charlie says he doesn't care about the money anymore and just wants to go home, but Josie points out that the sooner they get rid of the body, the sooner he can go home. The trio goes to a local tar pit, where they decide to dispose of the deputy's body. However, when they take out the suitcase, Agent Himes shows up with a gun and says he was suspicious already. So he decided to arrest 3 people alone instead of just searching their car while in the police station. Whatever, the agent does things personal and starts beating Gus, as he called him fat earlier on the road. Meanwhile, when Penelope is about to take Emily home, the deputy badge falls out from Charlie's coat, revealing Charlie has been up to no good. Charlie tries to bribe him with the $2 million, and when Himes is distracted, Gus sneaks his insulin and pricks on his foot. The sudden pain makes him lose his gun, and the other 2 urge Charlie to shoot him. However, Agent Himes soon finds Josie's face familiar and identifies her as the Wyoming widow, who seduces unsuspecting men and poisons them with a flask of laced whiskey. He swears she has one right now, as he felt it while handing her the coat. Turns out that Josie does have one in her pocket and is forced to take a sip.
Oh my God.
Oh God, Josie! Josie! Josie, come on, get it out!
You are so pathetic!
That was not funny!
However, they soon discover that Agent Himes flees away, making them have to look for him in the area, but Gus secretly takes the money from the car. When he's about to check the bag, Agent Himes appears, complaining he's fed up with people calling him fatty. He shot Gus and killed him before running away with the money. He enters the car only to get held at gunpoint by Josie, who's been waiting. Elsewhere, Penelope can be seen dropping the deputy badge into a river. Knowing Agent Himes is a diabetic, Josie and Charlie force him to eat a large lollipop, leading him to die not long after. When Charlie thinks the shit show is finally over and throws his gun, Josie pulls her gun on him, revealing she indeed is the Wyoming widow and that she can't risk Charlie turning himself in someday. She takes out the real flask and makes him choose between a bullet or the poisoned whiskey.
Any last words, Charlie?
Don't spend it all in one place.
Josie rushes to check the bag, but finds nothing but many stuffed toys in it. She frantically kicks and curses at Charlie, but he's already a dead man now. The scene cuts to the next day at Charlie's home. A man leaves a voicemail that they are very interested in publishing Charlie's book. Emily is seen drawing on some $100 bills next to large stacks of money. In the final scene, Josie hitches a ride with an old man. Before they go, the man says he has to double-check something. A bloody woman foot can be seen in the back of the truck, while Josie also checks how much is left in her flask. The movie ends with a close-up of the Oregon car plate, implying the man is the Oregon Undertaker. The end. Hit the like button and subscribe for more. Here are another 2 recommended videos. Click to check them out. Hope you enjoy my videos. Until next time.